the Press with David Gregory.
This Sunday, giving thanks and giving back. As we take a break from the rough and tumble world of politics here in Washington, we sit down with three very well-known Americans who are blessed with good fortune and who are using those fortunes to help those with far less. His purpose-driven life has sold more copies than any other book in history other than the Bible, and he leads one of America's largest congregations at his Saddleback Church in California. Pastor Rick Warren joins us for an exclusive discussion of faith and charity. Then, he's the world's richest man, founder of computer giant Microsoft. Together with his wife, Melinda, Bill Gates also runs the largest private charitable foundation in the world. They're here exclusively to discuss their mission to improve global health and education. But first, our focus on giving thanks and helping others during a tumultuous period in our country, economically and politically. With us, pastor, best-selling author, and no stranger to Washington, Rick Warren. Pastor Rick Warren, welcome back to Meet the Press.
Good to be back, thank you.
And I will call you Pastor Rick.
Yeah, just call me Rick. Just call me for dinner.
What is testing the faith of Americans, do you think, as we approach this holiday season?
Well, no doubt about it. The economy, the war in Afghanistan, but also I just think the political divisions are a big deal. That the coarsening of our society, that we're demonizing differences, those things need to be dealt with.
We think about Thanksgiving, we think about giving and being thankful for blessings. You have talked about giving in your own life. You've acted on giving. You give. Yeah. And you say that it's not a sin to be rich, but it's a sin to die rich.
I believe that. That's a personal conviction of mine. You know, thanks and giving go together. You can give without loving, but you cannot love without giving. You spell love, G-I-V-E. Probably the most famous verse in the Bible is John 3:16. God so loved the world that he gave his son. And the Bible says every good gift comes from God. We're most like God when we're giving, when we're generous, because everything we have is a gift. And I've gone on this journey for many years. When Kay and I got married 35 years ago, we began the biblical practice of tithing, 10%. 10% we would give away to help other people. At the end of our first year, we raised it to 11%. At the end of our second year, raised it to 12%. At the end of our third year, raised it to 13%. And each year, now the Bible doesn't tell you to do this. We were just, every time I give, it breaks the grip of materialism in my life. My heart grows bigger. And on years that things were financially tight and we didn't have a lot of money, we'd still raise our giving maybe 1/4%. And then when I'd get a raise or something, we'd raise it 4 or 5%. Well, now, after 35 years, we actually give away 90% and live on 10. And I play this game with God where God says, Rick, you give to me and I'll give to you and we'll see who wins. I've lost it for 35 years.
But also in the Bible, in Deuteronomy, it says, do not harden your heart and shut your hand against your impoverished brother. But at a time of so much economic fear, of resentment, of anxiety, how do you encourage people to avoid hardening their heart?
Well, you can get compassion fatigue because you see it all the time. But it is always possible to give thanks by giving. You can see, what God looks at is not the amount you give. He looks at the amount left over compared to what you give. And, you know, even if you didn't have any money, you can give time, which is actually far more valuable. You can always get more money, but when you give your time, you're giving away your life. So it's possible to always give something. By the way, so when some people talk about giving, they stop at nothing.
Right.
Yeah.
We've seen that giving has, in 2008, charitable giving was down, but not to religious institutions. It was as strong as ever. Why?
Well, I think because faith communities teach the importance of generosity, that it's a godly quality. As I said, we're most like God when we're giving. The issue of God is love, as I said, is a matter of giving back. And I think it's just a spiritual discipline. If you don't have that spiritual discipline, it's pretty easy. By the way, it's not an accident. The word miser and miserable come from the same root word.
It's interesting. Rabbi Joseph Telushkin, in his book, A Code of Jewish Ethics, writes something that caught my eye. I'll put it on the screen here. We become good people not by thinking good thoughts, but by doing
good deeds again and again, and it's the repetition of that. But how do you see a distinction between a lot of people who get caught up in giving where it may be that they're checking a box, they're sending in a check,
Right.
but they're not emptying themselves, or
Right,
they're not
right.
really giving a gift of their heart. Are there differences?
Well, I think there are different kinds of levels of giving. There is, at the shallowest level, is what I call the impulsive giving. That is, I see a commercial and I give, or I see somebody on the street and I give, and it's just an emotional response. That's good. It's better than nothing. But moving from impulsive giving up to regular giving, where I make it a habit in my life, whether other people need it or my temple or church needs it or not, I'm giving for my own benefit to become generous. Then there's systematic giving, there's proportional giving, and then there's sacrificial giving, which is giving when you really can't afford it. And that is really the highest, giving yourself away when you can't afford it.
Let's talk about the stewardship of influence and affluence,
Sure.
something that you've talked about
Sure.
before. What kind of influence are you having on fighting some of the most difficult problems around the world, including your work on the continent of Africa?
Well, David, in 2002, when I wrote Purpose Driven Life, and then it became a big bestseller and sold a lot of copies, it honestly brought in tens of millions of dollars. When you write the best-selling hardback in American history, and the most translated book in the world except for the Bible, it's tens of millions of dollars. And frankly, when this money started coming in, it scared me. I thought, I'm a pastor. I live a pretty simple lifestyle, and I don't need money, and so what am I supposed to do with this? And when you write a book and the first sentence is, it's not about you, then you figure the money's not for you, too. So we made 5 decisions. The first one was, we're not going to change our lifestyle one bit. I still live in the same house I've lived in 16 years. I drive a 10-year-old Ford truck, bought my watch at Walmart. You know, to me, if you got a good pair of jeans and a comfortable t-shirt, you don't have a whole lot of needs. So we didn't change it. Second thing is I stopped taking a salary from Saddleback Church now 7 years ago. The third thing is I added up all the church had paid me in the first 25 years, and I gave it all back. And I did that because I didn't want anybody thinking that I do what I do for money. I do this because I love Jesus Christ and I love God. And it's out of my motivation, and I love people that do this. We set up some charities. We have one called Acts of Mercy, which my wife leads, which helps people infected and affected with AIDS. And another one called Equipping Leaders. And we pay for leadership training all around the world. We set up a program called the Peace Plan, PEACE, which stands for Promote Reconciliation, Equip Servant Leaders, Ethical Leaders, Assist the Poor, Care for the Sick, Educate the Next Generation. By the end of December next year, we will have the Peace Plan have been to every single country in the world. There's 195 countries, 193 in the UN. North Korea and Bosnia aren't in the UN. We will have been in every country doing these humanitarian works.
Where is the need the greatest?
Well, the most oppressed country by far is North Korea. There's no doubt about it. The people there are suffering because of the idolatry of their own leader and things like that. But I would say the greatest need right now are the 146 million orphans in the world. There are 146 million kids growing up without mommies and daddies. That is anarchy waiting to happen. And whoever gets there first and loves them first will have their heart and devotion. And I always say to our government leaders that health care and poverty and relief and orphan care, this is good foreign policy. I discovered during President Bush years that during PEPFAR, when you save a life, people tend to like your country. They say, you know, my husband's alive because of PEPFAR. And so these things are important that we continue them because people will die, but also it's good policy.
It raises the point about what our priorities are. Bill and Melinda Gates, who we're also talking to in this program,
Right.
make the point that even a foundation like the Gates Foundation, which has the resources, which has scale, it's still the government that has to be involved to really have the biggest impact that's possible on this kind of problem.
Yeah, well, actually, there are 3 different sectors, and they all have a role. I've spoken at Davos several times, and when I go, I hear them talking about we need public-private partnerships, and they're talking about public-private partnership for ending poverty, for ending malaria, for all of these chronic global issues. and they say, we need this partnership, but actually they're missing the third leg of the stool. A one-legged stool will fall over, two-legged stool will fall over. There is the public sector, which is government and the NGOs, the nonprofits. There is the profit sector, which is business, and there is the faith sector. There's three sectors to society, not two, and each of them brings something to the table that the other doesn't have. Government has agenda-setting ability, priority-setting ability. Somebody's got to pave the roads, and government often will take the lead in this. Business brings things to the table like expertise, like capital, and a really good thing is management, because most governments, most churches, and most businesses are poorly managed. But temples and churches and houses of worship, mosques, they bring things to the table that government business will never have. They have volunteer manpower, they have local credibility, they have the widest distribution. I could take you to 10 million villages around the world, the only thing in it's church. They don't have a government, they don't have a hospital, they don't have a school, they got a church. The church was global 200 years before anybody started talking about globalization.
How close are we to getting an AIDS vaccine?
I don't think it'll be soon. My prayer is that we get it in this generation. But I think what we have to do is, even while we're waiting for the vaccine, we just keep on working for education. So much of AIDS is behavioral based, and I mean, you don't just get it out of the air. And we want to stop AIDS. We want to end AIDS, and we work with anybody and everybody who's willing to work. This is an important thing that I think even at this Thanksgiving, as we move into the holiday seasons, you don't have to agree with everybody to work with them on something. I can work with Muslims and atheists and other religions and gays and straights, and I can work with anything. If you want to save a life, that's a human issue. And so you don't have to water down your beliefs, but you can work for the common good, and that's what we need. I believe in the good news, and I believe in the common good.
As you and Kay have embraced people living with AIDS, has it changed your views at all about sexuality? Oh, absolutely. Much more sympathetic and understanding the pains and the reactions. I have understood that so many people today get stigmatized for different things. Now, of course, I have biblical beliefs about homosexuality, but when somebody's dying on the side of the road, you don't walk up to them and say, you know, what's your nationality, or what's your lifestyle, or what's your gender preference, or anything else. You just help the guy. And this is, by the way, the difference. I was asked the other day about illegal immigration, things like that. The role of the pastor and the role of the government are different things. My role is to love everybody. I am called to love everybody. In fact, the Bible says love your enemies. I am forbidden to hate anyone. Okay, so I am to love everybody. And if someone's hurting, I don't walk up and say, are you illegally here? I just want to help the person. But the government does have a right to decide who's in and who's out and things like that. But when you think about the debate about Proposition 8, which banned gay marriage in California, and you think about how much money, the tens of millions